We need to talk about this bike. Let's get into it. So I've had this bike for a year now, and I think I'm qualified to speak on this. We're going to go over a couple different categories. We're going to start with the design, then we're going to talk about the engine, the handling, and the features the bike comes with. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to get rid of it. I think the CBR650R has always been a very good looking sports bike. I think this year with the 24 model, they really nailed the look. They nailed the fairings. It looks sharper than ever. The tail is much better looking. And overall, there's only a couple of things I don't like about it. We're going to take a look at it in depth about what I don't like, and then I'm going to give you my verdict on the design. So we're going to talk about whether this beauty just has a pretty face or actually some brains behind it. Spoiler, it's got both. I mean, just look at it. It's like they took a Fireblade, shrunk it down a bit, and then said, look, this is for the responsible adults who still want to slay some twisties on the weekend. I mean, the mean looking headlights look like they want to fight you in a dark alley, and this bike has more angles than my math homework. When we're talking about the looks, we're obviously talking about a lot of different features. We're talking about the exhaust, we're talking about the fairing, we're talking about the styling, we're talking about the decals that the 24 model comes with this year, or the 25 even. There really aren't a lot of things I dislike, but we're going to start with the passenger foot pegs and the rider foot pegs. I said this before in another video, there's no reason for these to be silver. They should be black by default. Makes the bike look a lot better, and you're going to save money powder coating them down the line. The rear wheel and the swing arm, they look pretty clean. The only thing I'm missing, as I also said in another video, is the attachment for the bobbins. There's no reason for a bike in this price class to not have those. The 24 model also gets a new clutch block and an engine block that is completely stylized in black. I think it's much better looking than the bronze one from the previous years. I personally think if the fairing wasn't cut out here, it would look even better. Talking about the front of the bike, there isn't anything I dislike. I removed the stickers. I think it's a no-brainer. The stickers look terrible. Without the stickers, the bike looks like it has a huge nose. Right here. I think it looks really good. With the tail of the bike, Honda really outdid themselves. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. It looks sharp, especially if you get the pillion cover. There isn't any other bike, in my opinion, that has a better looking tail than this model at the moment. Another thing about the design is if you're looking at the red bike, you cannot remove these stripes from the tank. They are under the clear cover. It now has a black bridge in comparison to the silver one. I personally prefer the all black styling, especially on the fork as well. By default, the bike comes with really terrible, ugly levers, so make sure you change those immediately. And in general, sitting on the bike, I feel your rider view is really beautiful. It's a joy to look at. It does everything right. So the CBR650R is rocking a 649 inline 4, and it rides like absolute butter. The experience riding this bike has been an absolute joy. The power band is super linear. You know exactly when to expect your torque, when to expect your peak performance, and that is something that I really appreciate. I want my bike to be predictable. You get about 95 horsepower. It's not too little, it's not too much. The good thing about the bike is it's not constantly trying to yeet you into a tree. It's like the golden retriever of engines. Loyal, excited, and always happy to go fast. The one thing I'm personally missing from the engine though is a bit of excitement when you're reaching certain parts of the RPM, especially if you're reaching your peak torque. The bike always pretty much sounds the same. It does have a very distinct engine sound, which we're also going to take a look at in this video. Currently the bike isn't cold, so I'll only be able to show you the revs. I have a bit of a split opinion on the CBR650R sound. It's a very distinct sound, but it doesn't do anything exciting at all. It's missing something. If you're looking at other bikes in this category, the Aprilia RS660 or the GSX-8R, I feel like they all have very distinct sounds and they sort of come with a soul. And that is one thing I'm lacking from this bike, is a soul. The stock exhaust has no soul whatsoever. I don't think it sounds bad, but it's neutered. And yeah, you can really decide for yourself if you want a neutered bike, especially with the availability of the exhausts. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about the handling and comfort of the bike. That is the most important thing for me, which I am not entirely happy with, and I'm going to show you exactly why. The thing is, the bike doesn't seem like a toy, but it also doesn't bully you around like a leader bike, and the show-off front pistons, in my opinion, they don't really feel that good. They don't give you a lot of feedback the way I would love it from the road. The riding position is probably my biggest gripe with the bike. It is not as sporty as a super sport bike where your clip-ons are much lower, but it is also not something where I'm comfortable riding it for 5 to 6 hours. I feel like, especially with the seat, the way the seat is constructed, it doesn't allow you to sit on this bike like you're supposed to. If you're sitting further back like you're supposed to, you always slide forward during your rides. If you sit too far forward, I feel like my nuts are gonna explode after 15 minutes of riding. With my size, I don't feel comfortable leaning forward exactly because my back is always hunched and this bike doesn't allow me to lean into it without hurting my neck in the long run. The, in my opinion, poor handling and poor comfort combined with the fact that it is a very, very heavy bike at about 209 to 212 kilos, depending on whether you have the E-clutch model or not. I feel like this thing just doesn't want to take corners as easily as other bikes. One of my viewers commented that Japanese bikes are generally made for people who are 180 or below, and with my 188, I feel like anything and everything I do on this bike, leaning into the turn, leaning forward, I feel like everything I do hurts my comfort and my back and my neck. And now you might say, well, okay, of course, it's a sport bike, right? It's supposed to be a bit uncomfortable when you're leaning into it. It isn't an upright naked bike where you're sitting like this and cruising for 5 hours. Of course, I understand this. The question is, what does the CBR650R want to be? Does it want to be a sport bike? Does it want to be a sport touring bike? If it wants to be a sport touring bike, it needs to add a lot of comfort, especially since Honda doesn't offer any additional seats for this bike that are a bit more comfortable. They don't allow any of those options to be purchased. I've been riding this bike for a while now, as I said before, and I don't think the seat has gotten any more comfortable at all. And I've been looking into replacement seats, but I don't think that's going to really solve the issue, because either way, no matter how I ride, as soon as I brake, I'm going to slide forward and my nuts start hurting, and then I'm going to have to readjust myself. I'm going to have to readjust my grips. I'm going to have to readjust my entire body. All of this, the bike doesn't seem to want you to sit in one position for the entire ride. Obviously, this is a highly subjective opinion. You might not have an issue with this bike whatsoever. Even if you're the same size as me, you might have a stronger back, you might have a stronger lumbar, you might have, a stronger neck muscle. I'm going specifically on what this bike does for me and what it does wrong for me. Handling is always a difficult thing to talk about, and comfort is also very difficult to really judge because it's so individual and so subjective. Everyone might feel completely different about a bike. Some people might get Neo Cafe racers and feel insanely comfortable on them, and others might think they need a chiropractor visit after 2 rides. So for those of you who want to buy this bike and do longer tours all the time, you really have to ask yourself if you want to compromise comfort for a bit of a sporty look. Damn. Personally, I feel like this bike does too much wrong instead of doing too much right. It's very heavy. It is a sports touring bike. It doesn't really pick and choose between wanting to be a super sport or wanting to be a more relaxed naked bike style riding type. The wheels are super far apart. With the 180 wheels and the weight, this thing wants to be dragged down into corners. This thing doesn't telepathically move into corners like you would expect from a easy to handle naked bike like the MT-07, right, with 184 kilos curb weight. Let's get into the tech and features about this bike, and I think that is probably the simplest category to really talk about because there isn't much to talk about. Honda did upgrade the bike with a nice screen. It does have some features that the previous models didn't have, but it also took away some features, like the temperature gauge on the dash. That is something that every motorcycle should have, because with bikes especially, you want to really only push them when they're warm, and you have no fucking idea whenever this thing is warm, because who the hell looks into their entire menu every time they stop in a red light to figure out, is my bike warm, to look at the water temperature? This is such a dramatic oversight, and I still haven't patched it. I really don't understand what they're trying to achieve with that. Road sync is nice. I found myself using it at the start all the time. In the meanwhile, I don't use it at all because the road sync maps integration, Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever, for iPhone, you can only use the Apple Maps integration, is absolutely terrible. The way you find targets, the way you find places to ride to is really unintuitive. It never works. It takes forever to cycle through. There is a limited overview you get over your maps whenever you started a navigation. So if you're looking ahead to try and figure out what turn is coming next or what place you're currently at, it doesn't allow you to do any of that. So in my opinion, Honda Road Sync might have well just been left out. It is a cool feature to have, especially if you want to switch through music. Unfortunately, it only supports Apple Music, which is also the dumbest thing ever. I use YouTube Music for everything because I have YouTube Premium. Why does it only limit it to Apple Music? This is also something that, you know, you could complain about, or you could just completely ignore. It's there, you never have to use it, you never have to interact with it, but why put it on a bike if it's that bad and unfinished? So let's talk about reliability, service costs, and all of these things when we're getting into the tech part a bit further. The bike is incredibly cheap to own. The bike costs $10,499, I think, brand new. I don't think they currently deliver any regular models anymore. They pretty much only want to push the e-clutch. And you might be asking yourself why I didn't go with the e-clutch. It's because I don't want a new technology on my bike. I don't want to try out new technology that I don't know the long-term effects on. And especially if you were thinking about the e-clutch sticking out here, it's really a hindrance for my legs in that case. I don't know anything about the service cost for the e-clutch, how much it does need to be serviced, but for this bike, the service costs have been super low. So my first service at 1,000 kilometers was about 180 bucks. It was just an oil change and everything, you know, regular type. And the year inspection that I did, that you normally do after 1 year or 12K, it was about 273 euros. In my opinion, also very cheap. Other bike brands might be way more expensive than that. This thing does about 4.5 to 5 liters if you're riding it very aggressively, very sporty. So it does have a very good fuel economy. I usually get about 300 to 350 kilometers per tank. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this bike and why you shouldn't buy this. I think the pros of this bike I'm gonna list here. The bike is affordable, it is easy to service, it is easy maintenance, it does have good fuel economy, it looks incredibly cool, it looks fast, it looks like you're about to ride MotoGP when you actually aren't. It has really good Honda reliability. Everyone knows Honda is a very reliable motorcycle maker. Another pro is that for this price you get a fully fleshed out 4-cylinder engine, which has a very distinct riding style and a very distinct sound. That is something that is going to be very difficult for me to change from in the future. If you once ride a 4-cylinder bike, you never really want to go back to anything else. The bike has a linear power band. You always know what to expect from it. No surprises. The bike absolutely doesn't give you any surprises when riding ever. Another good thing about the bike is that it does have that new and upgraded TFT display, which allows you to do a couple of more things and customize it. I think a lot of people are going to like that. On the other hand, that is also one of the cons, which we're going to get into right now. So let's talk about what sucks about this bike. I think the bike doesn't know what it wants to be in terms of comfort and handling. I think it could have done a much better job in that regard. I assume that it has been the same for all the CBR models in the past. And I feel like Honda is improving in the wrong areas on this motorcycle, except for the looks. I think my biggest gripe about the bike is the weight. Of course, with a 4-cylinder bike, you're going to have the additional weight in comparison to a 2-cylinder, which allows it to be much lighter, much more easy to handle. But the thing is, at this price point, when you're looking at a sport touring bike that is 212 kilos with the e-clutch at max, and you're looking to get this bike for longer tours, you're really not doing yourself any favors, because it doesn't do corners well, in my opinion. The comfort is really at a detriment in the long run. The bike is lacking critical features, like it has absolutely no attachment points for bobbins, which means you're going to have to use the shitty paddock stands for this bike. Personally, I don't like that because they're not as safe. A clear oversight, as mentioned before, are the silver passenger foot pegs and the rider foot pegs. There's absolutely no reason to make them silver. You could have just made them a better color. Other bikes do that as well and integrate them much better into the bike. With this bike also, it is a bit more difficult to add frame sliders to the bike because you actually need to take the fairing off. It's a lot of work, so why does that have to be so complicated? Honda Road Sync might as well just not exist. Honestly, they might have well just not upgraded the TFT at all. At this point, I'm afraid to ask why they did. They did upgrade it, but it was sort of a downgrade. If I look at the previous bikes, at the end of the day, do you really need all this fancy shit in your display? Do you have to have an adjustable speedometer? Do you have to be able to change from night and day mode? It's like, give me the critical information I need instead of giving me toys to play around with, which I'm gonna, lose interest in a year after riding the bike. Another thing to note that I really don't like, it might be a Honda thing. I made a video about this in my top 5 things I don't like about this bike, is the fact that it misses gear so often when you're switching from first to second, or when you're switching from 5th to 6th. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It doesn't have a reliable shifting mechanism. So ultimately, who is this bike for? If you're looking to get a motorcycle that doesn't kill you at every corner, if you're looking for something that is predictable, has a linear power band, turns heads all the time, the amount of looks I get with this bike is absolutely unreal. Seriously, you ride anywhere in the city, everyone looks at you because of this distinct sound it makes and because of the fact that it looks absolutely incredible. I mean, take a look at it. But at the end of the day, you really need to ask yourself if you want to make these compromises for this motorcycle, especially since there are other options that do not have all of these shortcomings the CBR comes with. So, in summary, what do we think about the bike and why am I going to sell it? I think I've gotten to the point where I realized that my intention with riding isn't anymore to get people to turn their heads and look at me and think I'm cool. I think I'm past that point now with the bike, and I feel like with this bike, I turn more heads than even with a Fireblade. It might seem like I'm complaining about the bike, but ultimately I really love it. And I'm pretty sad about the fact that I'm not going to keep this and I want to sell it. But I feel like this bike just isn't for me. It doesn't push all the buttons that it needs to push. And especially when it comes to handling and comfort, I worry way too much about my correct seating position, about my back pain, about my neck pain, about the comfort of the seat, about the comfort of the grips, about the height of the grips, about the fact that I can't bend forward. There's too much to worry about in order to really enjoy the riding experience for me personally. And I am not going to say that this is a bad bike whatsoever. I think this is a fantastic bike, especially for the price I got it at. I think at this point the CBR is trying to be too mature for being a sports bike, and it needs that extra soul and that extra kick during your riding experience. I'm looking at a couple other bikes now, and I don't think power is the issue at all. This bike has plenty of power. So now you might be thinking, what bike are you gonna get next? I made a poll on Instagram and a lot of people think I'm gonna get a Fireblade. And to be honest, no. I would never wanna spend that much money on a bike that I don't think is comfortable. And people who ride Fireblades telling you the bike is comfortable in the long run, they're just lying to you. Why would I get a bike that wants to kill me in the long term? I think I've come to the realization that sports bikes just aren't for me. I am probably gonna go move forward towards naked bikes in the future, and I'm looking at the Hornet 1000. I'm still debating to myself if I want to get the Hornet 1000 SP or if I want to get the regular Hornet 1000, but I feel like the Hornet is gonna alleviate most of the issues that I have with my riding currently. So if you're from Munich and surrounding areas and you want to buy this bike, let me know on Instagram. Send me a message. Let's talk. You can come visit it and we're going to talk about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my final ultimate review on this bike. I think it's been long overdue that I told you what I think about it now after a year of riding. And if you liked the video, if this helped you out with your purchase decision, especially with the 25 plus models, please let me know in the comments. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.